As we do every day, noon to 2 Eastern, from the Question Tequila Studios, we're at the Liquid Lunch Outpost downtown here on Broadway in New York City, right down the street. We go to the New York Stock Exchange, where today we're up marginally about 26 points. Nothing really to report there, waiting for some comments from Donald Trump today. We did pull back some big ticket item tariffs, but we'll see how that pans out with the market later when the president starts speaking. We are allegedly going to carry anchored coverage of Donald Trump's comments today. And Bitcoin is down just a bit. Seems to be in a cycle from the 1st to around the 15th where there's some selling pressure, and then there's been some bounces after that. We'll keep our eye on that, but you keep your eye on the ball and keep your eye on this guy. Makes me look good every day. Frank Morano, managing editor, co-host, everything else. Good morning in the East.
Well, in the East, it's actually the afternoon.
Good afternoon in the East.
Hello there, John. You're very fixated on the time of day. I want to bring you off this time of day obsession because they replay the show early in the morning or late at night, depending on your perspective. So whether it's morning or afternoon on the East Coast, a lot of times when they replay the show, your comments about saying good morning or good afternoon, they're not necessarily as accurate.
They don't fit.
Exactly.
Saying. So, all right, so I'll try to stop saying that.
You know what? You can say
I'm trying
hello.
to be like, live and local for our peeps out there. I want them to know it's live, what time it is, even if I give them the wrong time.
Exactly. They have the time on the screen. I mean.
All right. I'm going to try not to do that anymore. We're improving every day.
Exactly.
For those of you watching at home, we try to keep you abreast of everything that's going on with our humble little show here, even behind the scenes. You should really be watching, if you're not, on Saturdays at 5 p.m., the best shots of Liquid Lunch, which just premiered 2 weeks ago. Gives you a little more of the behind the scenes. We had a big meeting yesterday after the show. Frank led it with a host of production items and management organizational items. And I'm expecting to get better.
A market improvement.
And we're great already, but we're gonna, we're always trying to make television great again. But I'm hopeful. And today there was the emergence of a giant whiteboard, or a medium-sized whiteboard, which is progress in the right direction. And I, for one, will stop stop giving you the time of day, so that in the reruns it doesn't confuse the viewers. Is that good?
And by the way,
do better.
We're doing no, you're doing great, John. We're going to be doing a Sunday edition of the best shots of Liquid Lunch as well.
I didn't know if you wanted to break that big news yet. I wasn't sure if it made it in, but
all right. Well,
that's right. Starting this week, you can get your daily dose of Liquid Lunch, the shots, the neat, the dirty, the shaken, the stirred, the whole darn thing, 7 days a week. 70 million homes, 40 million phones.
Those poor homes.
That's right.
Now,
so what's happening?
Well, there's a ton of interesting news happening. The Roger Stone trial, we're keeping an eye on in D.C. Former Paul Manafort associate Rick Gates is testifying this morning. He's testifying as a government witness, so you can bet the Stone lawyers are going to try and poke some holes into what they're saying. But it's going to be interesting. We'll keep an eye on this speech. The president, boy, for a guy that's moved out of New York, the guy certainly seems to be in New York quite a bit. He was in town last weekend for a mixed martial arts match. He was here yesterday for the Veterans Parade, and he's still here in New York City to give a speech before the Economic Club, and we're going to bring that to you live, hopefully. But none of those are what I am speaking, frankly, about. All right. Well, towards the end of yesterday's show, I alluded to the fact that my friend Congressman Peter King would not be running for re-election. And we spoke briefly about Peter King and why he's such an effective public servant, and he is. When you talk about a bipartisan lawmaker, when you talk about a nonpartisan lawmaker, when you talk about a guy that's an independent and really true to his principles, we're talking about Peter King. And that means he actually gets to deliver for New Yorkers. You want to know how independent he is? Well, he's opposed to the Donald Trump impeachment. I know what you're saying. Well, a lot of Republicans are opposed to the Donald Trump impeachment. Well, one of his first big votes when he was a young member of Congress was the Bill Clinton impeachment. As a Republican, he voted against the Bill Clinton impeachment as well. He got vilified on the radio day in and day out by people like Rush Limbaugh and other conservatives that just wanted to skewer Bill Clinton. He really helped deliver for Hurricane Sandy aid, something that I know is near and dear to your heart, John.
That is true.
You know, in terms of the 9/11 Victims Compensation Act, that would not have gotten done and would not have been fully funded without the assistance of somebody like Peter King. He has no problem calling out the crazies within his own party. You might recall he said if Ted Cruz was ever his own party's nominee, he would poison himself to death. So he's very outspoken. He's almost like the radio talk show host of politicians, which is why he's such a popular radio talk show guest. Now, I could go on and on for literally the whole show about all the things that make Peter King a great public official. I'm not going to. And Peter King and I disagree on a lot of different things, especially with respect to foreign policy. But when it comes to being a fine public servant, nobody does it better than Peter King. And I was thrilled to see that recognized in a tweet by Senator Chuck Schumer yesterday. Take a look at this series of tweets that the top Democrat in Washington, at least on the Senate side, put out yesterday. This was Chuck Schumer. Peter King stood head and shoulders above everyone else. He's been principled and never let others push him away from his principles. He's fiercely loved American, Long Island, and his Irish heritage and left a lasting mark on all three. I will miss him in Congress and value his friendship. Now, that's nice. That's a cordial thing for a member of Congress to do when one of their brethren leave. That stands in stark contrast to what we got from Minnesota Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. Take a look at this. Ilhan Omar tweeted the following. Peter King is an Islamophobe who held McCarthyite hearings targeting American Muslims, said, quote, there are too many mosques in this country, close quote, and blamed Eric Garner for his own death at the hands of the police. And then the coup de grace of this Ilhan Omar tweet, good riddance. Let me tell you something. This tweet about Ilhan Omar tells you everything you need to know about her. Peter King is not an Islamophobe. You'll recall Peter King played a leading role in helping muster bipartisan support for Bill Clinton with the war in Kosovo. Now, I was opposed to American intervention in the war in Kosovo. I'm opposed to American intervention in most places. But what were we doing in Kosovo? We were protecting Muslims, Albanian Muslims, from being slaughtered. Is that what an Islamophobe does? And you want to talk phobes? You know, usually the phrase that gets thrown around for Ilhan Omar is anti-Semite. I think a better phrase might be Jewophobe or Israelophobe, because she has this irrational, absurd fear and hatred of Israel. Sure. And it's so appropriate that on a day where Israel is being shelled by rockets from Gaza, which is their reward for killing a terrorist, that she chooses to put out this hateful tweet about a genuine public servant.
I'm sniffing it.
You're sniffing tequila.
I don't want to start having a drink yet, but you get me so aggravated right now. Let me just tell you something, folks. We're a new show on Newsmax. We only started humbly May 13th, just a few months ago. We're trying to get better every day. Yesterday, we had a big call with Elliot, big head honcho here at the network, about the standards and practices, the protocols we should adhere to be more professional on air. The certain words that we're not supposed to say on air. And it was very informative, Frank, I might add, right? I mean, it was very good for us to enhance our professionalism, to know, you know, where the boundaries are.
Absolutely.
And had we not had that call just yesterday, I probably would say a bunch of things about Ilhan Omar right now that would get me in significant trouble with Elliot. I'm not going to say that. I want to, but I'm not. Because our voice is important and I'll get us kicked off here.
That's right.
But I look at this and think, like, in neighborhood talk, she's a punk. That's what she is. Because she don't even know how to respect her elders. You don't know how to have a little grace. The guy's on his way out. He's a legend. You've been there for a month. You've embarrassed yourself a dozen times already. And you got reason to call this guy all kinds of unwarranted names and say good riddance to a legend. You're a punk. That's all I say. That's the best I can say without going outside the bounds of the 7 words that we got warned about yesterday.
All right. Well, quick update from Washington, John. A couple of different proceedings we're watching down there. One is the Roger Stone case. It's looking now like Roger Stone, for those of you that haven't been following this, is a longtime Trump advisor and confidant who is charged with obstruction of proceeding, witness intimidation, and lying to Congress. It's looking like Roger Stone does not plan to take the stand. His attorney just asked to introduce as evidence a 50-minute audio recording of Stone's testimony to Congress, and the judge just said a couple of minutes ago, I don't see why we wouldn't close tomorrow. So it looks like this Roger Stone case could be drawing to a close. I'm a little disappointed. I was hoping to get down there one day next week, but hopefully the jury will do the right thing.
Me personally, I'm going with an acquittal on this. I think Roger Stone did nothing wrong. I think he's been unfairly prosecuted, and if it's going to be a quick in and out, I have a feeling that it's going to be an acquittal, and that's what I'm hoping for.
Well,
frankly, that's all I can tell you.
We are watching that as well as the impeachment proceedings, which are going to go public tomorrow, because that's the first day that we'll get to hear from Ambassador Taylor or any of these witnesses.
Should we, just to have some counter programming, should we have the whistleblower in tomorrow for the opening?
We'll
because there's probably going to be a lot of mention of the whistleblower, and he hasn't been called. Adam Schiff has refused to let him be called, but for some reason he's responsive to us. So
I'll put in a request with his attorneys today. But speaking of attorneys, one of the finest legal minds in the country, Alan Dershowitz, commented about what we're seeing in terms of this impeachment fiasco. Listen to Alan Dershowitz on a podcast. I don't recall which podcast it is. We will credit them. This is what Alan Dershowitz said.
Brenty Beria, the head of the KGB, said to Stalin, he said, "Show me the man and I'll find you the crime," which he really meant, I'll make up the crime. And so the Democrats are now making up crimes. First, they made up collusion. Oh, collusion, it's a crime. I searched the statute books. There's no crime of collusion except when businessmen get together to collude against the antitrust laws, but no crime of collusion with a foreign country.
That is actually, I believe, from the Cats Roundtable, not from a podcast on my radio station, AM 970, The Answer. I don't think you could have said it any better than what Dershowitz said just there. I mean, this is almost Stalin-esque, in my judgment.
Fantastic. Rafael Manguel coming up right after this, fellow and deputy director of legal policy at the Manhattan Institute. Nate Bradley, the CEO of Data Donate, comes in right after that. We got a whopper of a show coming up for you. Maciej Golubeszewicz, and I'll try to get better at that. Frank's already going to correct me, but the Consul General of Poland on the Netflix dust-up, accusing Poland of being part of the Nazi machine. And we'll talk about Poland. We'll talk about all that right after this.